Welcome back to the Unity Terrain Basics series. In the last episode, we've looked at texture painting techniques on terrain meshes. In this video, I'll be introducing a free, amazing tool for auto texture painting. It is a script which automatically applies textures onto the terrain mesh based on the terrain data and your configurations. It is particularly useful when dealing with overly large terrains. To install the tool, we have to visit the online asset store. Search for Procedural Terrain Painter. Scroll down until you see this Procedural Terrain Painter, which is free of charge. And simply click Add to my assets. From the official description, you can see it supports stackable and reorderable modifiers, heat map visualizer, and also auto repainting. This tool supports a few modifiers including height range, slope range, curvature range, noise, and RGBA texture mask. We will go through these modifiers in the later part of this video. After messing around in the asset store, we can now fire up our editor. Go to Window, Package Manager. From the drop-down, select My Assets. It may take a while to refresh all the assets from the server. Then we can search for Procedural Terrain Painter. Select the package, hit download. Once the package has been downloaded, hit import, and we are ready to go. The first step will be to group our terrain tiles into a single parent. This way we can better manage all the terrain tile objects. Select the parent objects and hit Add Components in the Inspector tab. And in the search box, we're going to type Terrain Painter. This is a script, and you will see a list of terrains. By clicking the Add Active Terrains, the script will automatically find all the tiles present in the current scene. Below the list, we can see the Auto Repaint function. When this option is checked, the terrain tiles will be automatically repainted whenever we make changes to the layers. The Splat Map Resolution controls the transition between different terrain layers. A higher Splat Map resolution will cost more memory, but the transition will be more detailed. We should choose a resolution that balances between appearance and memory cost. The Color Map Resolution controls the resolution of a precompiled texture. This precompiled texture represents the color of the terrain with all the layers combined. If you're not sure how to tune these values, just leave them as default. The bound settings is for calculating the actual bounds of all the added terrains. This is useful when we adjust the size of the terrain tiles and the bound is not updated, so that's why we need to click on this Recalculate Bounds button to actually compute the real bounds after we modify the terrain tiles. Now let's move on to the Layers tab. This tab is very similar to what we've dealt with in the last video. And as you can see, there is a list of layers, and there are 3 buttons. We're going to use the Add button here to add our base layer, which is the grass layer that we've created last time. Let's now add another layer. I will add a grass. It has a more yellowish color. And you can see it is applied above the base grass texture. And I can use this icon here to hide the texture. And this is where things get interesting. We can use the modifier stack here to control how this texture is applied. By clicking the plus button, you will see a few options: curvature, height, noise, slope, and texture mask. Let's first work with the height. The height is very simple. It just determines at which height this texture will begin to appear. Currently it is set to 0, and if I increase it to 100, you will see that the yellowish texture is applied above a certain level. And I can also control the max height. For example, I can set it to 300, so it only appears within this height range. The fall off controls the blending. That means how far it will blend with the textures below. The min fall off controls the lower bounds, while the max fall off controls the upper bound. For example, I can set it to 50, and as you can see, the texture is blended to remove the seam between textures. I will do the same for the upper bound, and it looks more natural. To remove a layer from the stack, we simply use this trash can icon here and hit OK. Do pay attention that after removing a layer from this stack, the layer will also be removed from the terrain tiles. Let's play with another texture. This time I'll use a cliff texture. And of course we need to apply some modifiers. This time I will use the slope. And it has a range between 0 and 90 degrees. That means from horizontal to vertical. I will modify the minimum slope. For example, 10. And as you can see, the texture is only applied to the places where the slope is greater than or equal to 10. By playing with the fall off values, we can adjust the blending to make it more natural. Let's add another texture. I will use the rock layer, and let's play with the curvature. The curvature has a min-max value between 0 and 1. It measures the curvature between the vertices to check whether that spot is convex or concave. What's best about the modifier stack is that we can apply multiple modifiers. For example, if I don't want a cliff texture to appear below the water level while maintaining the slope modifier, I can add another one. I can use the height modifier to constrain the upper and lower limits. And by adjusting the mode here, you can see we have multiply, add, subtract, min, and max. This controls how this layer is applied on top of another. Here I will use the min mode and set the min constraint to 100. Now, this texture or this layer will not appear below the water level. Let's try to add some snow texture to the mountaintop. To do this, we add a snow texture, and I will first constrain it with the height. I want it to appear about 400 meters. And of course, we need to control the blending. So for the min fall off, I will set it to 100. And now the snow texture is blended but oftentimes it is quite confusing to use the curvature option. So I prefer using the slope modifier over the curvature. Another interesting option is the texture mask. We can apply the texture mask modifier and choose a texture. For example, I can choose this arrow texture, and it is very interesting. This way we can stamp different shapes directly. And you can see we have a channel option with the options RGBA. We have to choose the right channel. In this case, I'm using the alpha channel, which is the transparency. I can also use the span terrains to maximize it across all the tiles. This feature is very useful if we want to add biomes onto our terrain. The noise modifier, in my experience, randomizes the way the texture is drawn. Choosing the simplex noise and increasing the scale, you can see that this rocky texture is modified as I change the scale. Let's try to apply a sand texture below the water level. We simply add a sand texture and it is covering everything. Of course, we need to add the height modifier to constrain the max value. What I would do usually is to further reduce the max value to say 75. For the max fall off, I will choose a value of 60. So the sand texture blends with the grass texture. Again, the layer stack is similar to what we have seen in the last video. By changing the order of the layers, they will be drawn on top of each other. For example, if I move the sand layer to the bottom, it becomes the base layer and it will be completely hidden because the grass texture is drawn on top of it. That is why we have to pay attention to the order of the layers. The grass texture will always be the base layer for me. Then I draw the sand on top of the grass. Of course, another way to do it will be to constrain the grass layer with a height modifier by setting the min value to 100 and the max fall off to say 60. Then we can achieve the same result. At this stage, I will try to make the textures more natural and to shape a better terrain. So enjoy. And there I've built an awesome looking terrain. The lake bottom is composed of gravel and sand. Grass is covering the plain areas. For the steep slopes, we have cliff and the rock textures. For the mountaintop, we have some snowy areas up there. And all of these layers and textures are painted automatically by this tool based on our configurations. I did not use any of the brushes. Finally, a huge shout out to Staggart Creations for such an amazing tool. I've been using this tool over the past few years on many of my projects, and it is completely free of charge. They have a detailed documentation on how to use this tool, and all the related links will be available down in the video description. I am Yellow Flicker. I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned.